Welcome back to the follow-up. We're on episode number 2.
To y'all.
It's been a morning.
Yeah, well, it has been. It's Monday.
It's a Monday.
Yeah, well, when we're recording, it's a Monday. I don't know when it is when you're watching this, but Monday when we're doing this.
Which means things don't work. Cables aren't working. I can't dim my light in the back.
It's like Monday the 13th.
It is kind of like Monday the 13th.
I don't know.
But you know.
Yeah.
It happens. We're here.
You know, and that's what makes us professionals, because regardless of the situation,
We showed up.
we showed up,
We did it.
we muscle through, and
I even brought my kid today because he's got off from school. So I drug him along for the funny business.
the funny business, hopefully very funny business.
But quite frankly, I need a vacation.
Word.
You need a vacation.
I need more than a vacation at this point. I need a vacation from my vacation.
I'm feeling you. We are in the thick of wedding season and event season right now, and it's tiring. From the planning avenue, it's tiring. I'm kind of ready for a break.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times people just don't realize everything that goes into creating what we do.
No.
You know, regardless of whether it's, you know, when we're doing a gig or even just like today,
Yeah.
there's so many logistics that have to be taken care of, you know, the scheduling and, you know, equipment. And like today, when we have equipment problems, you know, so you've got to figure out how to make things
I know,
work.
it'd be really great if we could just walk in and it's already set up.
Man, these are high-paid movie stars, man. I tell you,
It'd be really nice.
they're killing me. They're
I
killing me.
know. Well, I'm not complaining. It's just, you know, it's just been a challenging morning, so I need to get into my groove here. But what I wanted to talk about on our second episode, which we failed to do in our first episode, was
You failed.
I failed, actually. I'm the one that came up with the
You're the boss.
idea. So, but what I wanted to lay out there for our audience to know about is who we are, where we came from, what we do, why we're sitting in these chairs right now, why we're doing this show in the first place. First of all, tell me where you're born, where you grew up, and was there anyone in your family that was a musician that kind of got you started?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Columbus, Ohio. So that's where I was born. Moved around quite a bit. My dad was a minister, and the denomination that he's in, every year they would get a reassignment, and sometimes it would be the same place, sometimes it would be a different place. So when I was growing up, I never lived in the same place for more than like 4 or 5 years, I think, before we got moved somewhere else. So I moved around quite a bit. But like I said, my dad was a minister, but before that, he was actually a professional singer. He was a concert hall singer. And he traveled around the world doing these shows that were half, like the first half, like light classical operatic stuff, arias, that sort of thing. And then the second half was like Negro spirituals. And this was back in the 40s. Yeah. So, yeah, he lived in New York for a while. He was actually a staff arranger for a record label up there called Gotham, and worked with a lot of big names before they were big names. But so music was always kind of a part of my life. And
Was it a big thing in your household? I mean, was music playing all the time?
yeah, well, you know what? Music, funny enough, music wasn't playing all the time. You know, of course, this is, you know, well before the days of streaming services and anything else. I mean, we basically had AM radio.
Yeah.
And so there was you know, we would always listen to music in the car. And I think actually the first bonding experience I had with my dad was over music, which was, I know the second. The first one was when he got me involved in martial arts, but the bonding experience was musical. But I do remember my dad. He wrote a cantata, and I remember as a kid watching him sit at the dining room table with manuscript paper and during the composition. And my dad's one of those people that, you know, I really dislike, which is someone with perfect pitch. And so he was able to sit there and score everything just,
Wow.
you know, mentally. And
Was he an instrumentalist?
no, he was a vocalist. He played a little bit of
It's still
piano.
pretty impressive that he can sit down there and write a cantata out on a piece of manuscript paper by ear, not even using a piano.
Yeah, yeah, it's nuts. And also because like when I was much younger, one of the churches that he was pastoring, the parsonage and the church were connected. And so, like when there was choir rehearsal or stuff like that, I could hear everything that's going on. And sometimes I just kind of walk in between the places. And so, I mean, I just was always around music. Started playing music, picked up the trumpet when I was in fifth grade.
And why the trumpet?
You
Why?
really want to know the answer to that?
Yeah, why the trumpet?
Because I'm stupid. Honestly, I am a dumbass. The reason I picked the trumpet, well, first, when it was time to pick an instrument, right? So I come home from school and tell my mom and dad, say, oh, time to pick an instrument for school. And my dad said, well, what do you want to play? And I said, I want to play the drums. And
That's what I was going to say.
yeah,
I said, you
and
could have picked the drums.
he immediately looked at me and said, no, you have to play a musical instrument.
Oh.
So
Ooh,
slam.
sorry, drummers.
Sorry, Logan. But then I started thinking, I'm like, well, I kind of like to play saxophone. I thought it was kind of cool. And then I said, too many of those keys, And it's like, well, how about, I'm thinking, well, maybe trombone. It's like, well, how do you know what you're playing? It's like all the,
Yeah.
the slippery slides. And I looked at the trumpet and I'm like, well, there are only 3 valves. How hard could it be? Not knowing that in terms of the physical requirements of playing a musical instrument, trumpet is by far the hardest.
Very hard.
It is harder than any of the other
Just the
brass
way you have to
instruments.
hold your lips.
Yeah, you've got a very small diameter mouthpiece here, and everything is done by. And those three valves, I got to make every note possible just using those
Yeah,
3 valves.
yeah.
So,
Well, Jose hit some pretty darn high notes. So,
that's well, that's a different story.
well, I've also heard too that it's helpful to have little lips, but some of the best trumpet players have had big lips.
Yeah. Well, it's all about something called the aperture.
Aperture.
The aperture.
Same thing with singing. Same exact thing with
Yeah.
singing.
But yeah, that's kind of how my gateway into music. And I played in band, obviously band and orchestra when I was in high school, and actually started playing with most of my high school and junior high band directors because there was a local musicians union, and they had a concert band and they had a jazz band, and I played in both of those bands. Started when I was in high school, like a sophomore in high school. I started playing with them, and got my union card at 16,
No
and so
way.
that was when I got my first paycheck
Nice.
as a musician. So that just became the path for me.
Wow. Well, I'm an 80s baby, so you'll probably notice a generational gap in some of our stories. I grew up with a musical mother. My mom played piano in the church. She was, she played for the church, played for the choir. For a short stint, she was a choir director. And she started me on piano at 5. And I was doing pretty well with it, and for some reason I kind of fell off the bandwagon. Although it was still my secondary instrument in college, but I still kind of stink.
Hey.
It's been a part of my life for so long, but I still stink at it. I picked up saxophone for a while. Did not like that at all. Did not enjoy it. And I really didn't know I could sing until I was about, I don't know. I would always like to sing outside. So my dad would make me mow the lawn. First of all, I grew up in the country, and we had a very big lawn to mow. So my dad had a ride-on mower, and I had a smaller ride-on mower. And we would ride and mow the lawn every Saturday, 3 hours at a time. And I would sit on the lawnmower just singing. Little did I know that everyone could hear me. They could hear me over,
Right, over the lawnmower.
Yeah, and the cows would always there was cows, a field of cows, and they would stare at me. They're my first audience. But I used to sing all the time, didn't even think anything about it. I would sing in church. I think my first real singing stint, I think I was 6 years old and I was an angel. I was an angel in the church.
And never an angel since.
Angel in one of the Christmas shows. I do remember, this is something that will always stand out in my head. I remember I was in a little angel costume. No more jokes about that. And I remember I had to sing a solo. I think I sang Oh Holy Night. I stood up and I remember this big beam of light hitting me. So I could see all the white hair in the audience and I could see the glasses glaring. So I saw all these people and I was so nervous because I was so afraid of that high note. I was so afraid I wasn't going to hit that high note. Well, I sang the song, I hit the high note, and then I saw women with tissues blotting their eyes, and I go, there must be something to this. Not too long after that, I was riding in the back of the car one day, and my dad turned around to me. Anne Murray was on the radio. He turned around to me and he said, "You sound just like Anne Murray." And something about that one thing he said clicked in me, and I thought, I know what I want to do. That was the moment, and it was just a small thing, but which is why I think it's so important to make it a point. If you see, I do this a lot with little kids. If I see that they're doing something awesome, I want to let them know because it might flip a switch in them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing because you never know what's either going to encourage someone to go down a path that they might not have chosen, for fear. But also the converse of that, you never know when those little words or attitudes or actions is actually going to stifle somebody.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true too.
I had that with my dad.
Yeah.
Where, because he had perfect pitch and because he's, is kind of a very particular
person, yeah.
person, he would always, he would criticize what I would do. And I'm still to this day occasionally trying to fight those voices in my head.
Oh.
About making mistakes and stuff like that.
Oh man, I fight those after every show we do. I fight those, and I'm always beating myself up, going, "I could have done this better. I could have done that better." And I think most musicians do that actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're never going to achieve greatness if you don't push your comfort zone.
Right. I think it's good to be critical of yourself.
Yeah, you have to, because if not, then you're never going to do the work.
Right.
You're never going to get into the, as we say, get into the wood shed
Yeah.
to work the stuff out. But I recently watching the recent season of The Voice right now, which is phenomenal. I used to hate reality TV shows. Actually, I do still hate reality TV shows, but I love this one. And this season, the thing that I love the most are the 4 judges that they have. Reba, Snoop Dogg, Michael Bublé,
Yes.
and Gwen Stefani.
Yes.
And they are all so positive with
yeah.
people. And everyone, like when people don't get the chair turns, like in the blind auditions, one of them always says something to the effect of, everyone up here on this panel has been told no millions of times. So don't let this one moment define your career negatively. Use it as fuel to go back, do the work, and come back and try it again.
Yeah, you're never going to learn unless you make a mistake, or you're never going to learn unless you acknowledge that maybe you need to work on something. And sometimes it's a harsh reality when it first happens, but it's it helps you grow as an artist.
Yeah. Well, I have a thing that kind of has stuck in my head for many years. When I was in high school, I got turned on to trumpet player Maynard Ferguson, which is why I had this penchant for playing high notes. And he was talking about, this is back in the 70s, talking about the age divide. But he was talking about the baseball player Reggie Jackson. They used to call him Mr. October. At the time, he was the highest paid baseball player. He maybe made $1 million a year. Like right now, that's like chump change
Yeah.
for a professional player. They said, here's a guy getting paid, $1 million, and his batting average was like 300, which means that every 10 times he went up to the plate, he would get 3 hits.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, so if you're worried about going for that note and afraid that you're going to miss it, he said, you have probably better odds of hitting that note than Reggie Jackson, who's getting paid $1 million. So just go for it.
Just go for it.
Swing for the fences.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuck in my head. And you have to be willing to try. You have to make those mistakes, and eventually you're going to get the home run.
Yeah.
So.
One of the hard things is a lot of times you can't do it in private.
Yeah.
It's always in front of an audience.
Well, yeah.
You don't always want to go into doing a performance and making a mistake or looking bad. And sometimes we're in front of hundreds of people. There was one song this summer that we were attempting, I was attempting rather, to do, and it was the couch song.
Sorry.
Sorry. Justin Bieber's Sorry, but it was done by the band Couch. I love that rendition of the song, but it's just on the cusp of being just, it's not necessarily too high, it's just unrelenting vocally,
Yep.
and you keep going and going. Her vocals are so energetic and unrelenting that it's almost like you can't take a breath.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to some of the hard, particular vocals that you need to do, you've run out of steam. But I wanted to keep doing it. I want to keep doing it because it's something I want to perfect. And I think it's going to be something that helps me get better. But you can't do it unless you keep trying. And every time actually, I think the last time we performed it, I felt like I had a home run hit during our sound check, and then I lost steam during the actual performance. So,
Yeah.
But that stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, well, it's part of the game. And the funniest part of it is, though, that we are hyper critical of ourselves.
Yes.
We're acutely aware of everything that we do well and everything we don't do well. But the truth of the matter is that unless it's like a complete flop, the audience really doesn't notice that much. I mean, unless it's other musicians, speaking for trumpet players, we're super critical. Like, we're like always listening and see, is he going to, especially if we know songs like, is he going to hit that note in September, or is he going to?
Well, the hard thing about what you do, and I think as a vocalist, is like you're not playing a chord. You are playing that one high note that sticks out.
Yeah.
And everyone notices. Everyone's looking at the vocalist. You're singing that one note that everyone is expecting you to hit, So I feel like you stand out.
Yeah. But, it's context. So when you think about whether it's doing a wedding or doing a festival gig or a corporate event or anything like that, we will beat ourselves up over one missed note. Mm-hmm. But during the course of that gig, we've played 10,000 notes. And we will just go, how'd the gig go?
I know.
Katie's like, it sucked. I blew that. And you miss one thing, or whether it's one note or one phrase or one song, it's really minuscule.
It's minuscule, and you're right. And in the grand scheme of things, it's very small. I've had to, and it hasn't been easy, and I have certainly not perfected it, but sometimes you just gotta let it go, and it's very hard to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the biggest thing, whether it's in music or anything in life, is that, we will let the one little thing derail us. So, maybe you chipped a note, you came in a little flat, you came in a little late, or you forgot the lyrics or something like that, and then you're thinking about the fact that you just messed up, which makes what you're going to do off. And so you
get all in the head about it.
And then you'll have a complete meltdown.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to let it go.
So when did you start playing music professionally?
Well, like I say, I got my union card at 16, so I started. That's
Were
when I
you in a
became.
band?
I was playing in a jazz band,
Okay.
in a big band. I mean, back in the mid 70s, there was still a lot of work
Yeah.
for big bands. So I did that, and then after I graduated from high school, I went to Ohio State University, and I was a music major there. And then I started to play in I always doing like gospel stuff and stuff in church. But then I started. I was actually sitting in a practice room, and some guy came and knocked on the door, and I he looked a lot older than anybody that I was going to school with. As this guy, his name is Rob Williams. Rob, if you're still out there, man, love you. He was a sax player, tremendous saxophone player, and he said, "Hey, man, I got your name from somebody that he knew." And he said, "We're looking for a trumpet player for a band. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "What kind of music?" He said, "Oh, it's a funk band."
Oh,
And it's like, I really have never played in the funk band, but yeah, why not? So I, started playing, playing in a little bar band, and that kind of got me going down that road, and so it's just been this evolution of playing with, doing a whole lot of cover band stuff over the years, and some original bands, and bands where I was a sideman, bands where I was a front man, bands where I was the leader. So just it's kind of been all over the place,
yeah.
eclectically, and I think that's what really helps me to hopefully do a good job with Central City,
Mm-hmm.
is the diversity of the stuff that I've played over the
Yeah.
years. Because people ask me like, "Oh, what kind of music do you guys play?" And I'm like, everything. Saying
Everything.
everything from American songbook, all the standards, Sinatra and stuff like that, all the way up to Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga and stuff like that. So country and jazz, and so
All of it.
it having that vocabulary is really really helpful, because there's a lot of players out there that they're great legit players, but they've never played jazz or never played pop, or and vice
Yeah,
versa.
it's very difficult to find qualified musicians to do these types of jobs because you have to be so diversified with your skills. You have to be so diverse in your understanding of different genres and how to perform them properly. And it's it takes a very special person with a very special background to be that person.
Yeah.
For me, well, so I started getting into musicals when I was in my early teens, and then I ended up moving to York, Pennsylvania, with my family at the time, and that was I think we moved to York in 1998. And I was from such a small town that I thought York was just big
The
time.
thriving metropolis of
I
New York.
did. I really did. It scared the living bejeebers out of me because I was not used to that. And listen, because I grew up with 30 kids in my freshman class in high school at a K through 12 school. K through 12 school, open. It was like a open layout school, open room school they called them, where everything's partitioned with like furniture and.
Yeah.
But anyway, you'd see kindergartners in the hallway, and then you'd see seniors in the hallway. I mean, it was not a big school by any means. So it was a bit of a culture shock for me because I thought it was so big. Now, granted, I've had a lot of much bigger experiences since then, but that's how I started. But when I moved here, I immediately got involved with the local theater. I think the first musical I did when I moved to York was Annie at York Little Theater. It is now called the Belmont Theater. Then I had met some people doing that show that were holding an audition for a pop band. Now this is during the boy band era of NSYNC and New Kids on the Block and Backstreet Boys. And I went and auditioned, and next thing you know, I was a part of a six-piece boy-girl pop group called As One. I have lots of footage of us, but we
Oh,
sang, we danced, we wore the headsets, we did the thing. We played a lot of the local fairs. We wrote and recorded original music. Now, we were we were multi-tracking a lot of things, but we weren't using a computer at the time. We were, using the clicking in,
yeah,
clicking out.
yeah,
Someone was sequencing a lot of our music for us on a legit, I thought it was like a 1980s sequencer. Now,
yeah,
the sounds would be cool now, but I
yeah.
think we were just kind of missing the mark in the 90s with our hipness and our coolness because we didn't, the sounds weren't modern enough. You know what I mean? But anyway, so I sang and I danced my way into learning how to really harmonize and work with other people, how to talk to people in the audience, how to dance, how to do all the things. It was a very, very eye-opening experience for me. I learned a lot about being in a band with other people, working with other people. But I also looked at our band manager. Her name is Holly Gumke. She's still a very, very, very close friend of mine. I almost consider her my second mother. She and her husband, they allowed us to rehearse in their house. And we spent hours and hours and hours in their basement practicing a couple times a week. We ate all the food in their fridge. She introduced us to many people in the industry who are now very, very good friends of mine. She's really probably the one that really taught me about the music business. So give it up to Holly for that one, and also ingraining the idea of this is what I wanted to do with my life, really. I ended up then going to college. I went to the Musicians Institute in Hollywood, California for music production. And then I also went to York College for music industry and recording technology. And I also studied vocals classically while I was there. And so for the diversity piece, I was singing classically, but I was also singing pop
Yeah.
at the same time. And I've had quite a few vocal teachers over the years that scolded me for doing that. They said, you cannot do both. It's going to ruin your voice. If you singing pop music is going to ruin your voice. But quite frankly, doing the two together actually, I think, really helped my voice.
Yeah.
They both do two very different things. But I don't, using your voice is a lot like acting. That's all it is. It's acting.
Yeah.
So you can do whatever you want with it, but I don't unless you're doing a style that it can be hurtful for your voice, or if you're singing improperly, that's something, but you can sing pop music properly.
Yeah, I think like what classical, like in from the instrumental perspective, uh, classical music has such a strong emphasis on technique,
Yes.
and that is very, very important. So it gives you the facility. Sometimes the feel can be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, so like, things like enunciation as a vocalist, the way you will enunciate words are slightly different classically than they are in the pop genre. But fundamentally, the way you produce the sound, whether it's the vocal sound or the sound of the horn or things like that, it's really all the same.
Well, I can tell you that as a classically trained singer, getting into the pop world, that was actually a big challenge because I was too proper. And
I've always said that about you, Katie. You're too proper.
I remember one of the first songs, one song I found particularly difficult initially was Destiny's Child, Say My Name. I found myself singing it operatically. And I'm like,
Say my name,
pretty much, it was like, say my name, say my name. It was like, you know what I mean? Like, it was very difficult to find my pop voice at first.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me some time.
Yeah.
I think I've been singing pop music now for so long, I've lost a lot of my classical chops.
Yeah.
My head voice is not nearly as strong as it was when I was singing classically every day. But I will say my voice was at its strongest when I was in college training for both at the same time. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of times you hear the little phrase, like music is a language, like it's a universal language, and it is. It truly is, and it's about communicating. But you think about like speaking English, you know, uh, the way that we're talking right now, much more conversational. Maybe use some slang, cut some things off here and there. Whereas if you're doing like a voiceover for something, or you're reading a speech or something, the speech is going to be much more precise, like the way you enunciate, the way you phrase
Yes.
things like that. And so we don't have a problem understanding that the way that you would speak formally and the way that you would speak casually are different. Yeah, that's just part of the game. But musically, I think we have this really weird division that comes up in our head. It's like, oh, but this is classical music. Oh, but this is jazz. Yeah, I mean, you have to change the way that you enunciate the things. You have to phrase them slightly different. You have to put a little different
It's a little
spin
voice
on it.
acting. That's what I call it.
Yeah, but it's still the same
It's the
words.
same, yeah.
Yeah, the same notes, the same kind of rhythms, yeah, fundamentally. So I think that a lot of times we get in our own way, and a lot of my friends are, kind of, I don't want to name drop or anything, but I've got a lot of friends that are really big names in the music industry, session players in L.A. and New York and Nashville and places like that, and most of those guys, they got to play it all, because you get a call, you walk into the studio, you have no idea whether you're going to be playing a jingle that's like a pop kind of tune, or it's going to be a jazz tune, or it's a classical tune, or you just don't know. So you just got to be able to go in
Yeah.
and play and speak the language
Yeah.
of the gig.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset always kind of resonated with me. I don't want to be considered a trumpet player. I don't want to be considered a jazz player or a legit player or any of those. I just want to be a trumpet player. I want
Yeah.
to be a musician. I just want to be somebody who, shares my love for music through my horn.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of well, there's a few, and I'm not going to name drop vocalists either, but some well-known local singers that have not trained a day in their life. They woke up, came out of their mom's womb, being able to sing unbelievably. And they learn from imitation, really. I know one of them in particular that I'm thinking of right now. I know she learned listening to Whitney, and she sang Whitney until she perfected Whitney, and that's the epitome of pop music, though. If you can sing Whitney Houston, if you can sing "I Want to Dance with Somebody" in the original key, you are considered
Yeah.
primo pop singer. No, I didn't. I think I've always had a natural gift of singing, but not to that extent. It's not like I didn't learn from imitation necessarily. I learned from training, and then I got into imitation after that. So it was kind of reversed for me.
Yeah. Well, there's a famous quote by trumpet player Clark Terry. And Clark would always say, imitate, assimilate, innovate. And that's the process. So in terms of specifically, he's talking about jazz, but I mean, it relates to pretty much everything.
Yep.
We learn primarily through imitation. A child learns to speak by imitating the
Yeah.
sounds that they hear. And then once you have mastered the art of the imitation, the assimilation phase is where you take that and you
Make it your own.
well, you make it you. You
Yeah.
make it part of you. So it's assimilate. You don't have to try to imitate Whitney. You don't have to try to imitate anything. That's the way it comes out. Then the innovation is when you take all of that and then you add your own unique
Yeah.
personal spin to
Yeah.
it. And you create your voice. You
Yeah.
find your voice.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, Katie sings like Whitney Houston. It's Katie sings like Katie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I don't think I've ever been great at imitating anyone because I always feel like I sound like Katie doing it.
Can you imitate Katie?
Because I don't sound like Whitney Houston. I sound like Katie.
Yeah.
But I try to do a Whitney Houston song Katie's way. So yeah. Yeah, I totally feel what you're putting down there. So did you ever have a stint in LA or do anything like that?
No, no, I didn't. Yeah, I thought about it for years. I thought about moving to LA. I thought about moving to Nashville. I thought about moving to New York, all the big centers of music. And fundamentally, it was fear. You know, it's like I didn't have enough confidence in myself to be able to say it. And I think it goes back to having this really weird misconception about what it means to be a professional musician. And I think that becomes part of the perfectionism that my father kind of pushed on me. It's like, if you're not the best, then why are you doing it? If you can't be the best, then why are you doing it? And the thing is that now that I'm much older, and yeah, certainly I could do that, but I don't want to anymore, because I've got a life, I've got a family, and I'm not just going to pick up, and I'm too old to go on the road and stuff like that. But I think that for where I was at that point, I didn't see it happening. And but now, in the reality, as I look back, it's like, yeah, I could have done it, because you don't have to be so as a trumpet player, like, one of my idols in terms of the music industry has been Jerry Hay. Jerry is the guy who did all of the arrangements for, like, Michael Jackson's Thriller and Off the Wall, and he's Quincy Jones' go-to arranger. Tremendous trumpet player. I mean, he plays like the most ungodly stuff and just makes it sound so easy. And that was my standard. And it's like, well, if I can't play as well as Jerry Hay, then I'm not going to do this. And but the thing is that, Jerry is Jerry, and there will never be another Jerry. But there are a lot of guys, and I know a lot of guys that are out there making a living
Yeah,
playing
me
that,
too.
that I'm not saying that I'm great, but I'm as good as they are, and it's just they just decided to do it.
To play that game, you have to be comfortable with putting yourself out there. And that's something I've never been comfortable with necessarily. Like, it's about them. They're very good at what they do and they know it.
Yeah.
And that's what they've got, that confidence, which is something I've always lacked.
Well, which I find funny, Katie, because well, we've had this conversation off camera so many times. It's like, you're a very good salesperson, like, for the organization, but this, like, selling
Oh,
yourself.
I'm horrible at selling myself. And then here I am doing a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't like talking about myself. I like talking about the things that I do. I like talking about my projects, but I don't necessarily like talking about me. Me. I don't like that. That makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's cringy.
Yeah, it's just cringy to me. So I'm just not very fond of that. But to play that game, you've got to be very comfortable with talking about
Yeah.
yourself.
Or you got to have a really good manager.
Well, for me, it's like it took me a long time to I'm definitely fell into a niche for myself. I needed to find, and I just kind of fell into what I'm doing now through experience, but I had to find what I was good at. What was I really good at? And, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of being a creative, being a marketing type mind. I worked for years doing graphic design, video editing, that sort of thing, before I was even doing it for our company, for Robin Banks Entertainment. But it was that I worked for a lot of different wedding band organizations all over the country, Dallas and Chicago, Philadelphia, before I kind of really realized, hey, I think I know where I'm supposed to be, and and how to do it. I learned a lot from other people, and then I realized, hey, I can do that, and I can do it better.
Yeah. Well, there's that. I think that's the key right there, is that, after having so many years of experience doing the stuff, and you see where
where the shortcomings
yeah.
are for other people. And I mainly worked for men. No, I mean, most of the band leaders and company owners that I worked for were men. And sorry, I'm not putting you down,
There you are.
but communication is a huge piece. And there's sometimes I find men find it difficult to communicate what needs to be done. And so I just thought I could do it better. Our company, Robin Banks Entertainment, we communicate pretty much nonstop with our musicians about what needs to happen. Communicating effectively is super important, which I felt was lackluster with a lot of the other people I worked for. When you have a band full of 10 people
Yeah.
and then production staff on top of that, and then you have clients that you've been in communication with for a year, you've got to be on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's probably why I'm so tired today, honestly.
Well, it's funny. It's kind of a dichotomy that exists, and because we were talking about earlier about giving yourself permission to fail, giving yourself permission to, to mess up, to go through the things that are going to help to make you better.
Yeah.
But the converse of that is that the better your preparation, the better your performance.
Yes.
And that's bottom line. And it really, if I have a pet peeve, it's when people have an attitude of, it's good enough.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it has to be perfect, but when you kind of have this lackadaisical attitude about things, that spills into other stuff. Because it's like one of my favorite sayings is, how you do anything is how you do everything. So it's like, if call time is 4:00, I'm going to be there and be ready at 3:50.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come waltzing in at 4:05 or 4:10 and just, kind of like, hey, what's up, man? If I am late, I am like so apologetic.
Yeah, I hate
because,
being late.
it's like, I don't like being late. I don't like having everything prepared, because I figure the more that I do before a show, the more work I put in before a show, the easier it is for me just to play the music.
Now, the fact that a lot of the things that we do involve somebody's most special day,
Yeah.
that to me really sets a high bar for what we need to do
Yeah.
and to be successful. A concert, a public show, that might be something a little bit different. Is there anything else that you would like to know about me and who I am and why I'm the crazy person that I am?
Well, I know a lot of the reasons why you're the crazy person that you are, but yeah, what do you get out of? I mean, being a musician, obviously, that in the most general perspective, I know what you get out of. But what is it specifically about the kind of work that we do, the kind of work that you have built with RBE? What is it specifically that makes you want to do that?
Well, there are a couple of things. I mean, obviously, I think there's an avenue you're thinking I'm going to go down here, which I will. I live for the moments. Like we had a show for Ronald McDonald House on Saturday, but we were on a big stage with a big sound system. The sound was great, and I was up there doing dinner music, and I love doing laid back dinner music to a big room of people that are listening and appreciate it. So I get a lot of joy out of those moments. But more specifically towards Robin Banks Entertainment and why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I want to give these professional musicians that we work with that are so amazing and that have spent their entire life working on their craft and becoming as good as they are. I want to give them the lucrative opportunities that I think they deserve. That's the big thing for me, aside from the performance piece. But they deserve all the lucrative opportunities that I can give them. And so that is a big goal and a big driver of mine for why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to have a strong enough why to get you through all the BS that you got to go
Yeah,
through.
there's a lot of BS in this business. There's a lot of BS. And of course, I'm a very empathetic person. I'm an empath. And I've had to learn a lot over the years of sometimes you can't control something, and sometimes you got to let those things go. If you fully cannot, if it's not in your control and it's completely up to someone else, you got to let it go. You've got to be okay with harsh criticism. I've had some awful criticism over the years, and it hurts so bad about, and it's not even always criticism about your abilities or your musicality. Sometimes it's about the way you look, which is the fucked up thing in this business. Oh, you're too fat, you're too short, you're not tan enough, you don't have enough hair. Like all the things I have heard. I've heard every single one of those things, which sucks. I've also been on the other side of the gate where I've had to say, I don't think you're the right person for this job. And that hurts just as bad to have to tell someone that. That sucks beyond belief. But you gotta always gotta remember, you gotta look at the big picture. How is this going to help the brand? And how is this gonna help the company grow? And how is this going to improve the musicality? There are just a lot of sucky things you do have to deal with. Or you have to deal with someone's grumpiness.
Grumpy, grumpy pants.
We all know who has some grumpy pants on a lot of the time. You don't have grumpy pants, but
Well, sometimes I do, but I try to keep my grumpy pants to myself.
or you have, you deal with some musicians that are a little wild on the side, or show up to jobs looking like a slob. So you gotta.
Yeah, we need to get some pre and post gig pictures of people. We'll blank out their faces. So
I know. The funny thing about it, though, is, everyone, especially in Central City, we're all characters. Everybody is a character. And you look at us from afar, all polished and on stage doing what we do best, and you're like, man, they're really just like this awesome, pristine group of people. And then you get off stage and you get to meet the real us, like the the crazy us.
Yes, welcome to the freak show.
We did a Ronald McDonald Charities Gala this past weekend, and it was our goal a night to make sure we could quote ba da ba ba ba, and every chance we could. But the funny thing is, everybody did it all night. Sax player, piano, singers did it all night. Nobody noticed.
Nobody knows. And that goes back to the whole thing about mistakes. A lot of times people just you notice it more than they
I know, and
notice
that's
it.
that's a huge frustrating thing for me, because I've subbed in with some other bands where I'm like, I was not happy with the way the band sounded. I'm going, woof, ugh. And then the audience comes up afterwards and is like, oh, this is just the most amazing thing ever. And I'm like, huh, maybe they really don't notice.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, if I could figure it out, I'd be way rich right now. I'd have Elon Musk money. But
Well, I do. One more thing before we wrap the conversation up, is one thing that really drives me nuts is our company's based in central Pennsylvania. We're based in downtown Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Central City Orchestra specifically, we get people ask us all the time, oh, where in Philly are you from? And we're like, we're not from Philly. So it's like a stigma attached. But there's a very weird stigma locally that you can't be as good as a Philly band, or they don't want to hire you. I've had a specific one father of the bride didn't want to hire us because we weren't from New York City, and because we couldn't possibly be as good as a New York City band, which is a really frustrating stigma to try to break, because I've been trying to break it for 8 years now.
well, certainly in terms of the talent pool,
We don't
100%.
it's not like we have a huge school of fish swimming around here that doing what we do.
Yeah.
And we do pull a lot of Philly musicians in. We have a lot of musicians from around the Mid-Atlantic we use on the regular, because we travel a lot and we have to. But yeah, we might not have as dense a population of the skill sets locally here that we need, but I don't like that. I think it's frustrating to have that stigma, because
Yeah, it's I'll equate it to like you were talking about your family, has the medical background, stuff like that. My wife's a nurse. Yes, I can relate to this as well. So you see people like, whether it's looking for a doctor or maybe looking for a lawyer or something like that, and they want to look at where did they go to school. It's like, oh, well, this person went to Harvard, and this person went
Oh
to
yeah.
Brown, and this person, well, they graduated from,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
some podunk school. Well, here's the thing: you could go to Harvard, and maybe you know there are 10,000 people in your, probably not 10,000, but there are 100 people in your graduating class. You could be number one, or you could also be number 100.
That's true. All right, folks. That is the second episode of the follow-up. Hope you learned a little bit of something about each of us. If you have any other questions for us in terms of why we're here and and why we're doing what we're doing,
I don't know.
send us a message and we'd be happy to answer that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Until next time.